I've always been the type of person people underestimate. Maybe it's my voice, soft, polite. Or the way I tend to listen more than I speak. Maybe it's because I don't interrupt in meetings, or because I bring muffins to the Monday huddles and remember everyone's birthdays. Whatever the reason, they assume I'm naive. That assumption? I weaponized it. When I first joined the company, I was just grateful to have landed the job. It was a marketing firm with a decent reputation, and I needed stability after a rough layoff. I was hired as a communications coordinator, technically entry-level, but I came with 5 years of solid experience. Still, I didn't complain. I just rolled up my sleeves and got to work. And that's when Hannah noticed me. Hannah was my direct supervisor, sharp-tongued, always dressed to kill, and someone who thought mentorship meant micromanaging and passive-aggressive guidance. On my first day, she smiled and said, "You'll do fine as long as you stay in your lane." I didn't know what she meant then, but I would. At first, it was small things. She'd ask me to format her slides as a favor and then present them in meetings as her own. I'd write up newsletter drafts, only to have her slap her name at the bottom. When clients complimented my work, she'd jump in to redirect praise. "Ellie's learning," she'd say with a smirk. But I keep a close eye on her stuff. I kept my smile intact. Let her think I was still learning. She started pushing boundaries. Asked me to reply to emails on her behalf. Handle vendor invoices. Organize weekend events. All unofficial, all unpaid, all for experience. She called it being a team player. By month 4, I was basically running half her workload. But any time I brought up opportunities to take on more responsibility officially, Hannah's voice turned syrupy and slow, like she was addressing a child. "Oh, sweetie, you're not quite there yet. Let's not rush." That's when I started saving everything. I created a folder on my personal cloud titled Notes, with a subfolder called Mentorship_material, because if she was going to treat me like a trainee, I was going to take notes like emails, chats, screenshots, even voice memos after toxic conversations. Every petty insult disguised as coaching. Every "you'll stay late tonight, right?" message that came after hours. Every time she dropped her mistakes in my lap with a smile and the words, "You don't mind, do you?" I never said no. I just smiled, said of course, and saved another file. The breaking point came during a campaign review for one of our biggest clients. I had pulled data, run analytics, and rewritten their brand pitch entirely after Hannah's version bombed in a test run. She loved my draft, so much that she presented it, word for word, in the client call. I watched her take credit. I watched the client praise her. I watched our VP nod in approval. She never mentioned my name. That night, she messaged me. "Great job cleaning that up for me. This is why I always say you'll make a great assistant one day." Assistant. Not strategist. Not associate. Not even coordinator. Assistant. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I copied it into a document titled, Final Straw. 2 weeks later, the CEO announced a new initiative to promote transparency and open feedback. No retaliation, the company promised. Your voice matters. They invited employees to submit feedback directly to leadership. No filters, no chains of command. Just a direct line. I waited until Friday night. The office was quiet. I stayed late. I opened my folder, compiled every relevant document into a 27-page PDF, and wrote a short but clear email to the CEO's office. I didn't rant. I didn't complain. I documented. And when I hit send, I didn't sign it anonymous. I signed it. Ellie Carter, Communications Coordinator, the one you've never heard of. Until now. I didn't sleep much that weekend. Even though I knew I had done nothing wrong, nothing unethical, nothing dishonest, a voice in my head kept whispering, "You just sent a file that could burn your manager's career to the ground." By Sunday evening, I had made peace with it. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I was tired of hiding behind fake smiles and polite nods while someone else trampled my work and dignity. If there were consequences, I was ready for them. I had the truth. And the truth, especially the well-documented kind, has power. Monday arrived. I walked into the office like it was any other day. Hannah was already there, of course. She never let anyone forget she came in early. "Morning, Ellie," she said cheerily, not even looking up from her monitor. "Make sure to grab the new analytics report and bring it to my desk before the team check-in." Business as usual. I did exactly that. I wasn't going to tip her off. Not yet. At 10:17 a.m., I saw it, a calendar notification. Meeting invite. One with HR, conference room 4C. No subject. No agenda. 2:30 p.m. I swallowed hard. Here we go. The hours between 10:17 and 2:30 moved like molasses. I went through emails, reviewed drafts, sat through our team meeting where Hannah repeated one of my strategy ideas and credited it to herself with a chuckle. I smiled. I took notes. I saved the chat transcript. Then I walked to conference room 4C. Inside were two people, Claire, the HR director, and someone I didn't recognize at first glance. Tall, composed, early 50s maybe. But then I saw the name tag clipped to her blouse. Julia Marin, Executive Office. The CEO's Chief of Staff. They didn't waste time. Claire opened a folder and said, "Ellie, we've reviewed the materials you submitted. First, let me say, thank you. What you documented is thorough, professional, and deeply concerning." Julia nodded. The CEO read it personally. He asked me to sit in today to understand how best to proceed. "You've shown exceptional composure under pressure. But we want to hear it in your own words now, how long this has been happening, and how it's affected your role." I told them everything. Not just about the credit theft or the manipulation, but about the culture Hannah had created. The way junior staff avoided her. The offhand comments she made about interns being disposable. The times she made a coworker cry and laughed it off. All of it. I didn't cry. I didn't dramatize. I just laid it out, one fact at a time. When I finished, there was a silence. Then Julia asked, "If we were to take action, would you be comfortable remaining in your current position while we transition things?" It hit me. They weren't asking if they were going to act. They already had a plan. I nodded slowly. "Yes. I just want to work without having to look over my shoulder." She smiled. "You won't have to anymore." That night, an all-hands meeting was called for the following morning. Unusual, but not unheard of. Still, there was a buzz in the office. Something was happening. The next day, at precisely 9 a.m., Julia stepped into the room. No Hannah. Julia cleared her throat and addressed the team. Effective immediately, Hannah Reed will no longer be with the company. We wish her the best in her future endeavors. In the interim, Ellie Carter will be leading campaign coordination efforts and reporting directly to executive staff. Every head turned to me. I kept my expression calm, professional. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I just said, "Thank you," and took my seat. Because for the first time in months, maybe in years, I wasn't pretending anymore. The silence after the announcement was louder than applause. As I sat in that conference room, officially stepping into a role I had already been doing unofficially for months, I could feel the weight of a dozen pairs of eyes on me. Some shocked, some confused, and a few, very few, impressed. No one asked what had happened. Not out loud. But the whispers started before I even left the room. By lunchtime, my inbox was already filling with polite congratulatory messages from teammates, some genuine, most awkward. My desk, still the same one I'd had since day one, now had an extra chair beside it. HR sent a plant. One of the interns brought me coffee and said, nervously, "Congrats." I gave him a warm smile and said, "Thank you." I think so too. But not everyone was celebrating. There was Matt, Hannah's longtime favorite, a senior associate with a permanent smirk and a penchant for gossiping near the copier. He walked by my desk that afternoon and muttered just loud enough for me to hear, so I guess throwing people under the bus does pay off. I looked up, still calm. No one was thrown, Matt. But if they were, maybe they shouldn't have been standing in the road. He didn't reply. He just walked away, more confused than annoyed. I wasn't supposed to respond like that. I wasn't playing naive Ellie anymore, and it threw people off. The truth is, the hardest part of getting what you deserve isn't the work, it's surviving the shift afterward. I'd always been a background character, the one who stayed late but didn't speak up. Now I was suddenly in meetings with execs, making decisions, being asked for input I used to give quietly through Hannah's filtered voice. It was both exhilarating and isolating. One night, 2 weeks after Hannah's exit, I stayed late, again, trying to finalize a media schedule for our next rollout. I was the last person in the office, or so I thought. As I got up to stretch, I noticed someone standing in the hallway. It was Julia, the CEO's chief of staff. She was carrying a takeout bag and smiled when she saw me. Figured I'd find you here. She stepped into my office now, and handed me a box of noodles and a bottled iced tea. I've been watching how you've handled this, she said, settling into the guest chair. No power grabs, no gossip, no arrogance. Just work. That's rare. I didn't quite know what to say, so I just shrugged. I'm just trying to do what I was already doing, now with a title. She nodded slowly. That's exactly why leadership is keeping a close eye on you, in a good way. You don't have to fight so hard anymore, Ellie. You already proved your worth. Let us back you now. I felt my throat tighten. No one had ever said something like that to me in a professional setting. I had always been the assistant, the behind-the-scenes fixer, the person who didn't need recognition, who wasn't quite ready, who just needed a little more experience. But now I had someone powerful, someone I respected, telling me the fight was over. For a moment, I didn't feel like I was climbing anymore. I felt like I'd arrived. That night, I didn't save any emails. I didn't screenshot anything. I just sat there, finished my noodles, and let the silence of a calm office wash over me like a fresh beginning. But little did I know, Hannah wasn't quite finished yet. The next few weeks were the quietest I'd ever experienced at the company. No drama, no passive-aggressive suggestions. No unpaid overtime being packaged as opportunities. I had structure, autonomy, respect. It was unfamiliar and a little eerie. I was learning how to trust the silence. Then on a rainy Thursday morning, she came back. Not officially, not on the employee roster, but she returned, physically, boldly, wearing heels that echoed down the hallway like a warning bell. I was in the break room getting tea when I heard the unmistakable click-click of her walk. I froze. She rounded the corner, her umbrella dripping and sunglasses still perched on her head despite the gray weather. Hannah Reed. Dismissed, disgraced, but still composed. Ellie, she said flatly, as if we'd just seen each other yesterday. Hannah, I replied, voice neutral. She didn't smile. I need a few personal items from my old office. I'm here by appointment. Security knows. I nodded slowly. You could have asked them to retrieve it for you. I'm not here to cause trouble. That line. She'd used it before, dozens of times, always before causing exactly the kind of trouble she'd deny. I stepped aside and let her pass. Her eyes flicked around the office as she walked, as if expecting people to stare or maybe hoping someone would run to greet her. No one did. By the time I returned to my desk, I saw her walking out, a small box in her hands, a few books, a fake succulent, a framed photo of her and someone I never saw at the office. But just before she reached the elevator, she turned back. You played it smart, she said, standing near the glass doors. Her tone wasn't angry. It was almost curious. You knew what you were doing the whole time, didn't you? I stood up from my chair. I did. She tilted her head. You always had it in you. I just didn't think you'd actually pull the trigger. You gave me all the ammunition. A beat of silence passed between us. Then she smiled, not warm, not pleasant. A tight-lipped grin that hinted at grudging respect and bruised pride. Well, she said, enjoy it while it lasts. Then she was gone. That should have been the end of it. But Hannah, as I was beginning to realize, was a storm in human form, unpredictable, relentless, and unable to let go. A week later, I was summoned to another meeting, this time with legal. Turns out, Hannah had filed a claim. Wrongful termination. Hostile environment. Targeted retaliation. The works. She claimed that I had colluded with senior leadership to force her out. That I'd manipulated messages, twisted context, and weaponized personal ambition to advance my career. I almost laughed when they told me, but I didn't. Instead, I pulled out the flash drive I kept in my purse. The same one I'd backed up my mentorship_material folder onto. I handed it to the company's legal team and said simply, "You'll find the original timestamps, metadata, and message threads here. Unedited, unfiltered, truthful." They didn't even ask me to stay longer. They thanked me and said, "We'll take it from here." By Friday, I received an internal memo stating that all claims had been reviewed and dismissed. The evidence was overwhelming. The company had closed the chapter. But something strange happened after that. People started coming to me. Interns, junior staff, even a couple of my own peers. They wanted advice. They asked how to deal with unreasonable expectations or how to speak up without losing their jobs. One woman teared up just thanking me, saying I had done what she'd been too scared to do a year ago. And suddenly I realized I hadn't just defended myself. I'd changed something. I didn't burn bridges. I lit up the dark corners people were afraid to look into. Months passed. The memory of Hannah faded, though traces of her still lingered. A slide template she'd once created, an old office joke someone hesitated to tell, even the occasional email from a client who still had her name in the CC field. But her presence? That was gone. And in its absence, something else had taken root, room to breathe. For the first time since joining the company, I had space to build without fear, without second-guessing every word in my messages, every idea I shared. I led projects that once would have been siphoned away from me. Clients started asking for me directly. Interns I'd never even spoken to waved when they passed my desk. I hadn't just survived the fallout, I was becoming someone people looked up to. And then came the invitation. A few weeks after the legal team dismissed Hannah's claims, Julia, the CEO's chief of staff, asked to meet again. This time, it was in a larger conference room. There were 4 people already seated when I walked in. 2 VPs, a representative from HR, and the CEO himself, Mark Hamilton. He smiled warmly as I sat down. "Ellie, I've been hearing good things. Excellent work on the 4th quarter rollout." "Thank you, sir," I said, surprised but composed. "We didn't bring you here just to pat you on the back," he continued. "We're restructuring parts of our leadership model. The way you handled recent events, the way you documented, de-escalated, and maintained professionalism, it tells us something." I blinked. I wasn't sure where this was going. He leaned forward. "We want you to step into a new role, Associate Director of Internal Strategy. It's not just a title change. You'd be leading your own team, mentoring new hires, shaping operational policy. You won't be reporting to a manager anymore, you will be one." For a long moment, I didn't say anything. The room seemed to hum with expectation. I finally said, I didn't expect this." Julia spoke next. "That's exactly why you're the right fit. People who expect power usually misuse it. You earned this through action, not ambition. And frankly, we need more of that." I accepted. And that night, after the paperwork was signed and the congratulations quietly exchanged, I walked back to my apartment in the city, alone, cold air biting at my coat sleeves, heart racing not from nerves, but from disbelief. Just a year earlier, I'd sat at my desk swallowing condescension and whispering my worth only into a folder of saved messages. Now I sat at the table where decisions were made. They gave me a corner office. Not huge, not fancy, but it had windows and a door that I could close when I needed space. The first thing I did was remove the old furniture and add a second chair, not for power plays, but for collaboration. The second thing I did? I deleted the mentorship_material folder. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I didn't need it anymore. My protection was no longer in screenshots. It was in reputation. In allies. In the people who now walked into my office, sat in that second chair, and asked, "Can I talk to you about something that's been happening?" I listened. I validated. And when necessary, I helped them build their own folders too. Not to be vindictive, but because truth, like growth, should always have a record. Sometimes the softest voice in the room is the one building the case, brick by brick. And when the time comes, that voice doesn't scream. It simply speaks and shakes the walls.